everyone. You're watching ARIRANG News. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. First, a look at the stories we're following at this hour. Korea and Saudi Arabia sign a $2 billion deal that will build at least 2 Korean-made nuclear reactors in the Middle Eastern country. President Park Geun-hye again focuses on expanding economic ties. North Korea's top diplomat calls on the UN Human Rights Council to drop its resolution against Pyongyang, saying a previous UN report was based on the lies of criminals. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a nuclear deal currently being negotiated between Washington and Tehran will only ignite a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Now we begin with President Park Geun-hye's four-nation tour to the Middle East. On Tuesday, she signed a number of deals to expand the two countries' economic cooperation in industries other than oil, for example, nuclear energy and healthcare. Now she is in Saudi Arabia, and ARIRANG's presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun says there's much more to come.
Even though it's the biggest supplier of oil to Korea, Saudi Arabia is seeking new non-oil energy sources for its rising domestic power demand. Riyadh plans to build a dozen or more nuclear reactors that can generate 18 gigawatts of electricity by 2040. At Tuesday's summit between President Park Geun-hye and King Salman, Seoul and Riyadh signed a deal to jointly invest into studying the prospect of building at least 2 of Korea's small 100,000 kilowatt nuclear reactors in Saudi Arabia. When the reactor construction is finalized after 2018, Korea expects a $2 billion order and the world's first export of a small to mid-sized nuclear reactor. Nicknamed SMART for its name System Integrated Modular Advanced Reactor, the multifunctional reactor is about 1/10 the size of the more common type of reactor and can be used to generate electricity and desalinate seawater. President Park anticipated entering the global market with Saudi Arabia after constructing the reactors in the Arab country, then exporting them together to a third country. Korea also signed an agreement to share policies related to President Park's creative economy model in the form of innovation-based startups and centers to support them. Korea's SK Telecom, which runs one of the government's innovation centers, separately sealed a deal with a Saudi telecommunications company to export the conglomerate government startup institute cooperative model to the Arab nation.
Many state leaders have identified with our creative economy model, and they've expressed an interest in forging a creative economy partnership.
Korean healthcare firms will also participate in a Saudi pharmaceutical complex project, and a hospital plans to share its medical technology with a Saudi cancer center. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, Riyadh.
Now, North Korea once again demands the UN Human Rights Council drop its resolutions against Pyongyang's alleged crimes against humanity. North Korean Foreign Minister says the core testimony in a UN Human Rights report was based on lies. For details, here's ARIRANG's Hwang Sung-hee.
North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young used his platform to denounce a landmark UN report on Pyongyang's human rights abuses that was published last year. Addressing the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Tuesday, Lee called for the resolutions based on the report to be revoked immediately, since the core testimonies have been proven to be false.
The act of cooking up the report of the Commission of Inquiry based on lies of a few such criminals is itself a mistake, which is completely against the aspiration of the UN for civilization and the rule of law.
The recent backtracking by prominent defector Shin Dong-hyuk on the details of his life in a North Korean prison camp fueled the regime's attempts to discredit the entire UN report. Lee said the world body should also look into the CIA's harsh treatment of terror suspects.
The UN must put an end to its selectiveness on dealing with human rights issues by listing the US brutality of torture as an urgent issue.
But North Korea's claims were met with strong calls by South Korea to immediately end its human rights violations.
We call on the DPRK to immediately take concrete and sincere steps so that its people can carry on a normal, dignified life.
At a separate conference, the North Korean diplomat called the ongoing joint military drills between Washington and Seoul a rehearsal for a nuclear war against Pyongyang and threatened to launch a preemptive strike on the U.S. if necessary. 황성희, ARIRANG News.
In his address to U.S. legislators, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the emerging nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran a, quote, very bad deal. He argues that the plan will not only help Iran develop nuclear weapons, but will also spark a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Park Ji-won has more.
Speaking before the U.S. Congress on Tuesday, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stressed that the current nuclear negotiations between the U.S. and Iran will only help Iran develop nuclear weapons capability.
This deal has two major concessions. One, leaving Iran with a vast nuclear program. And two, lifting the restrictions on that program in about a decade. That's why this deal is so bad. It doesn't block Iran's path to the bomb, it paves Iran's path to the bomb.
The Israeli Prime Minister also warned the deal will spark a fresh nuclear arms race in the Middle East, threatening stability in the region. The speech received loud applause from Republican lawmakers, but Obama's fellow Democratic lawmakers expressed their discontent with the speech, and dozens boycotted the speech.
The invitation and the speech set a dangerous precedent whereby congressional leaders from one party can invite a foreign politician to publicly oppose the policies of the sitting president on the House floor.
President Obama defended the position of his administration, saying the Israeli Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives, and this is the best deal possible.
If we're successful in negotiating, then in fact this will be the best deal possible to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Nothing else comes close. Sanctions won't do it. Even military action would not be as successful as the deal that we have put forward.
Obama refused to meet Netanyahu as the Israeli Prime Minister is facing an upcoming election later this month, and the visit could be seen as interference. Despite the Israeli Prime Minister's rejection of the deal, the U.S. and Iran are continuing their nuclear talks in Switzerland. The U.S. hopes to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon in exchange for a gradual lifting of economic sanctions. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. A much contested bill aimed at rooting out corruption passed the parliamentary hurdle yesterday, but critics are already raising concerns that the law's broad scope may make the legislation unconstitutional. Kim Young-gil explains.
A sweeping anti-corruption law will go into effect starting as early as September of next year, after an 18-month grace period. Under the new law, a person who receives money or gifts worth more than 1 million won or $912 million as a bribe for a favor is subject to up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to 5 times the value of the money or gifts received. But critics are already calling for revisions. One problem, they say, is that a person can be charged under both the anti-corruption law and criminal law. Another problem is that the law does not have a clause that enables the punishment of those who asked for the favors or contributed the bribes. The spouses of public officials are also subject to the law. Law experts say this is a form of collective punishment which is banned by the Constitution. The law also strengthens the power of the prosecution, which has already been criticized for abusing its investigative power. The prosecution is often questioned about its motives for investigations into politicians or CEOs. Experts say that the new law could make it easier for prosecutors to exploit their authority. Law enforcement officials could also use the law to investigate individuals or the media if they are seen as going against the government. Some lawmakers have also raised concerns that the law is unfair because it does not include civic groups, which are seen as the largest interest groups in society. The law was originally aimed at rooting out corruption within their government, but has now been expanded to other people with public influence, such as teachers and journalists. The legal community has expressed concerns that the law is so broad and ambiguous that anyone could become the target of a criminal investigation. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now, it's an established fact that it's not easy for young people in Korea to find a decent job. But what could be more worrying is that even if they do find a job, their income is rising at a rate that's in the 0% range. 아리랑's Shin Se-min takes a closer look.
Korea's younger generation, those in their 20s and 30s, are having a rough time in this period of slow growth. Youth unemployment is high, and those that have a job are finding that their pay isn't increasing much at all, especially compared to the salaries of Koreans approaching retirement. Statistics Korea says the income growth rate of younger Koreans hovered in the 0% range last year. The rate for people in their 50s? More like 7%. The slow income growth for the younger generation is also having another unwanted effect. They're having to take out more loans, with data showing the debt level of young homeowners rose over 11% last year. That's the highest in all age brackets. So it's even a troubling time for young Koreans in work, but a growing number of them don't even have a job. Last year saw hundreds of thousands of people to find work, but the youth unemployment rate actually had a record high of 9% in 2014. In other words, most of the newly created jobs were snapped up by workers in their 50s and 60s. And those young people with jobs often have to start their career on short-term contracts with little stability or upward potential. A recent survey shows nearly a fifth of young people who found work last year were on a contract of 1 year or less. Korea's Finance Minister Geun-hye also addressed the unemployment issue on Wednesday. He said that while the official figures show more people are finding jobs, tackling youth unemployment is proving to be one of the nation's most pressing issues. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Well, Korea's capital, Seoul, has been ranked among the top 10 most expensive cities in the world for the first time. The city was number 10 on the Economist Intelligence Unit's worldwide cost of living report, jumping 7 spots from last year. The top 5 remained the same as 2014, with Singapore at the top, followed by Paris and Oslo. Seoul's expensive clothing and food products were cited as pushing the Korean capital up in the list. In fact, clothing prices in Seoul and Singapore were found to be the most expensive in the world. The report evaluated some 160 products and services from more than 130 major cities, comparing them to a base index set to New York City. Now, the buzz surrounding Samsung Electronics lately has been its mobile payment service called Samsung Pay. The company says it's planning on sealing deals with 6 local credit card firms by the summer and making the service available in the second half of this year. Samsung also says its current plan is to focus on the South Korean and U.S. markets only. It has already inked deals with several U.S. payment companies, including Visa and MasterCard. The service platform will be featured on Samsung's recently unveiled Galaxy S6 and Galaxy S6 Edge smartphones. Now, Korea and the U.S. have pledged to strengthen their cooperation in setting up communications policies. The head of Korea's communications regulator, Choi Sung-jun, met his American counterpart Tom Wheeler on the sidelines of the Mobile World Congress currently underway in Barcelona, where they agreed to push for policies on net neutrality, also referred to as the open internet. This involves ensuring that governments and internet service providers allow the public to freely access data or services on the internet. Now, with the concept of the Internet of Things and big data becoming more prevalent, the two countries also agreed on the rising need to protect online privacy. China has hit the key period of its political year with the start of two meetings in Beijing this week. One big focus is how the country's elite plan to prop up China's slowing economic growth. Now, ARIRANG has prepared a three-part series on China's economy and its impact on Korean exports. And today, our Kim Min-ji looks at the reasons behind China's slowdown and what's being done to turn it around.
After decades of breakneck expansion, the Chinese economy wound down last year to its slowest pace in 24 years. It grew 7.4%, falling short of the government's target of 7.5%. At this year's major political meetings, China is expected to lay the groundwork for further reforms to aid this period of slowing growth.
China isn't expected to record double-digit growth anymore, given the size of its economy. Its exports and investment, which were once important growth drivers, are now seen as unsustainable.
China's exports have slumped in recent years due to sluggish global demand, and the country's heavy dependence on investments led to severe problems, including income inequality and an imbalance between consumption and investment. China describes the slowing momentum as the new normal, and efforts are underway to transform the economy to one that's driven by domestic consumption and services. The government has implemented various policies aimed at boosting consumption, such as accelerating urbanization, adopting universal health care, and easing regulations in the service sector.
China's consumption will start to rebound by 2020, according to our calculation. China's consumption will reach around 44% of GDP from the current 36%. By that time, Chinese consumption market will be $10.7 trillion.
Analysts see the slowdown in 2014 as a prelude to slower growth this year, as they don't foresee China's domestic-led growth to have an immediate impact. What's more, there are looming uncertainties for the global market, which is dependent on the Chinese economy for growth. And Korea is no exception, with China as its leading trade partner. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And back here in the nation, the dream of becoming a haven for cutting-edge technology was once scrapped for Keumdan, an area in the western city of Incheon. But that dream may soon become a reality with an infusion of capital from Dubai. ARIRANG's Connie Kim has the story.
It was once bustling with construction, but Keumdan in Korea's western port city of Incheon has been lying idle with the sluggish real estate market. But there's welcome news for Keumdan, as Dubai's government-owned fund is planning to invest $3.6 billion into the region. On Wednesday, the CEO of the Investment Corporation of Dubai gave a letter of intent to the mayor of Incheon, promising to build a global business city in Keumdan. This comes on the back of President Park Geun-hye's trip to the Middle East, where she's seeking deeper economic cooperation with the region. Dubbed the Future City Project, the investment fund will transform Keumdan into a cluster of information and communications technology firms and educational institutions. The $160 billion fund is also behind the construction of similar cities in Malta and India. Although previous deals between Korea and Dubai for developments in Jeju and Paju have been scrapped, Incheon is hopeful, as the CEO will be traveling to the city to sign the Memorandum of Understanding in 2 weeks. Keumdan was reportedly chosen as the ideal location for the project, given its accessibility to Incheon International Airport and the Seoul metropolitan area. This will be the fund's first project in East Asia, and it's expected to generate more than $900 million for companies annually, breathing new life into local communities in the region. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Now, some new musicals here in Korea around town are taking familiar stories that many of us grew up with and putting a new spin on them. Our Im Yoon-hee tells us about a few worth checking out today. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. So within the past decade or so, we've seen a huge explosion in the musical industry here in Korea. It's even being exported now. So we've seen everything from production of huge Broadway musicals along with small productions of domestic musicals as well. So today I have a look at a few more that you want to add to that list.
At one point or another, most teens dream of rocking out with a band on stage. The musical audition follows the story of a group of young teens, in particular, a boy and a girl who pursue their dreams of becoming the next world-famous musician. Audition brings a new element to musicals. The actors and actresses not only play their roles, but they also play their instruments as well. It's a concert musical filled with applause and cheers for an encore performance.
I was in a rock band from my teens until I was 31. The band was called Vox Pop, and that's the band that appears in this musical. Since my 20s have passed, I wanted to make a drama about that time in my life.
An age-old tale of the man who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. But this time, Robin Hood teams up with Prince Philip to lead a revolution. The musical Robin Hood is based on the original German production and stars a powerful cast made up of veteran favorites and up-and-coming stars.
I like to choose productions that I feel the audience will be engaged in until the very end. There isn't a single dull second in Robin Hood, and that's why I chose this performance.
The seven dwarves may have been Snow White's friend in the classic fairy tale, but here they tell the story of the young prince of fairyland looking for his princess. Dwarves is a new original Korean musical production that is based on the childhood fairy tales Snow White, Cinderella, and Little Mermaid. It's been praised for its original comedic content and its unusual approach to the stage.
That looks interesting in and of itself. So you were telling me earlier that the production of Doors was actually fully domestic.
Right, so it was completely done by a Korean production team like you saw, and it's a very interesting production. Got some quirks too. People have been commenting on that as well.
Right, so Robin Hood, I haven't seen that one yet, but I'm seeing some familiar faces.
Right. So you saw on the report, you saw Yosef of the K-pop idol group Beast. He shares the role of Prince Philip. He shares that role with Kyuhyun from Super Junior along with the musical actor Park Geun-hye, and now that role is the main character role, so they do a very good job with that as well. But it's interesting with this particular musical, people have been making comparisons to Robin Hood, the story of this musical, they've been comparing it to the current state of the Korean government. Interestingly, they've been saying how the opposition party, along with the ruling party, they have so many arguments that they forget the initial interest of the people, and so this story they have made comparisons as well.
So you may be leaving the musical with some meaningful
something to
message.
think about, right?
Okay. Well, the first musical that you introduced us to, the audition, that almost looked like a concert, not a musical.
Right. And people really have been saying that. People who have gone to see it have said that you feel like you're at a concert, sitting at the front row. So much adrenaline rushing through you, so much going on, and so that's another exciting performance to see. So if you're looking for something more than just a regular sit-down musical, you could definitely go check out that musical.
All right, thank you very much, Yoon-hee. It seems like we always have a full many musicals, but there's always new ones coming out.
Always something new, so you always got to stay on your toes.
All right, thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for today's report.
You're very welcome.
Hello, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Although we have clear sunny skies, we have a very cool, strong wind due to the influence of cold air mass pushing down from north. Now, in fact, there are even strong wind and wave advisory issued for the coastal regions. And there is also dry weather advisory for Gangwon province. So for those of you in the regions, please be careful with anything that could cause a fire. Now, temperatures are looking lower than yesterday as well. And along with the wind chill is down to -8 degrees here in the capital, and it will remain below zero for the rest of the day. Now, even the warmer regions down south will feel freezing cold, so make sure you bundle up wherever you are in the country. Now, taking a look at the readings for today, Seoul will peak up to 3 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will get up to 4 and 8 degrees. And to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 5, Dokdo hits down to 1, while Mangkeungang is sunny at -7 degrees. That's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And that's all the time we have for you now. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Another edition of ARIRANG News with me coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time.